Alright, so this is the first video on how to analyze your blood sample for double-labelled water. So the whole process is on 3 days, so this is the first step. So I've got all my blood samples that I brought back from the field in this falcon, each identified with color tags depending on the time point they were taken at. And so each bird has a falcon like that. And so first step is to get the water out of the blood. So in order to distill the water, you have to grab one cap tube, just like that. Make sure you know which bird it's coming from. So you need one cap tube, a little glass pipette like that, identified with the bird identification. So you can see here, I've got my bird identification and the time point at which it was taken. So in this case here, it's an initial sample. And what I want to do is transfer the blood in the glass pipette, seal both ends, and put it on a hot plate for 48 hours in order to get the water out of there. How to do so? It's pretty easy. You have your capillary that you just rub against this little rock thing. So you want to rub it in the middle of your capillary, so about right over here, so that it breaks approximately in the middle of your blood sample. So you don't have to put too much pressure, you just rub it a bit, create a weakness in the glass, and break it in two parts. So here I have my two parts of my capillaries, just like that. And I'm going to slide them in my glass pipette, seal end at the bottom, just like that. So make sure it goes at the bottom here of my glass pipette. There's a bit of blood that got out of one of my cap tube. That's okay, that's not a problem. So once it's at the bottom there, I want to first seal the large end of the pipette right over here. And so I'll do so using the blowtorch, which I'll turn on right away. There you go. And so sealing the end can take a little while since it's thick glass. And so first of all, I start by just rolling the glass around where I want to break it. So I do it pretty close to the end. I make sure I'm not burning any of the blood that's in my capillaries. And so usually I let it heat up a bit. And then with the pliers, just twist the end. Same thing that you were doing with the capillaries in the field, is just since it's much thicker glass, it takes longer. So right there, my glass is pretty soft, just twist it. And until the parts separate, there you go. And so this is what it looks like. So you got this hand that is sealed. Don't do as I just did and touch the glass. The glass is actually really, really hot. And so next step is that you'll want to seal the other end of the pipette so that when you distill the water, you don't lose all of your water. In order to do so, pretty easy, you'll just want to slide the capillaries in there towards that end. And so before doing that, you gotta make sure that your glass is cold enough so that you don't just burn your blood by pushing it through that end. So I'm gonna switch capillary just to show you. And so I've sealed that one previously. That one is now cold. I can just shake it a bit. There you go. So my capillaries are now at this end. And to seal that, I'll want first to vacuum seal it. And so I have a vacuum pump right over there. So that's the machine right over here. So to start it, you just have to plug it in. It's going to do a lot of noise. I'm just going to start to plug it in. And then, so that is plugged to the tube here that I'll just insert like that. Start pumping and then seal with the blowtorch, same way I've been doing for the other end. It's just much faster. So do so, just plug this in, start the blowtorch. There you go. Then again, don't touch the glass with your fingers, always use the pliers. And it's done. And so that's the final results. I have a cap tube, a glass pipette that is sealed at this end and at this end. If you're not sure, check your seal, make sure there's no leaking, you're not going to lose your water. You want to have your capillary towards this end here. And then just slide it on the hot plate, just like that. So fat end in the hot plate with the narrow end sticking out. And leave it there for 2 days. And in 2 days, you'll see the water will have accumulated at the narrow tip. That's it. Alright, so the samples have been here for the water to evaporate for now 2 days. And so the next step is to get the water from those little glass pipette and transfer them into the vials. And so first step is to shake the tube in order to make the water go at the end. So you just shake it like that, and all the water accumulates at the end right over here. And so once it's done, I have to choose in which vial I want to put it. And so we have 3 different type of vials. We have a glass one without any insert. We have a plastic one with an insert in there, and a glass one with an insert. And so I'm never working with the full glass one just because this requires larger volumes of water, and I'm working with really small volumes of water, so I never use that one. Then we have, so the 2 ones with insert, I prefer to work with the glass one only because it works better with the small volumes of water I'm working with, and the way the insert is done, it's easier to see if there's any air bubbles in there, which are bad. So if there's any air bubbles in there, it can mess up when the needle is going in for the analysis. And so I prefer to work with the glass one, but I work from time to time with the plastic one too, either when I have larger volumes or when I run out of glass ones. And so I've pre-labeled my vial according to the sample and the time point at which it was taken, so either if it's a baseline, initial, or final sample. And it has the bird identification on it, so I make sure that my sample here matches with the identification on the vial. And when I'm sure I have the right identification, I have to break the cap tube here with the water in order to transfer the water in the vial. And so I just rub it against this this thing here, and basically it just creates a weakness in the glass, allowing me to break it where I want it to break. And so I just put a bit of pressure to break it in half. I can now throw that part away, it's not going to be useful anymore. And then I have to break the second end in order to have the water come out of the tube. So same thing, rub it as close from the tip as possible so that I don't lose any of the water. And then before breaking it, I make sure that it's inserted in the vial, because the moment I break it, the water's going to rush out. So put it in there, break it. And there's always a tiny bit of water that stays in there, and I don't want to lose that water. So what I do is I just gently blow in there with this little tube. There you go. So I can now throw this part away. So we have 2 types of caps. We have white one and black one. With the ones with the vials I'm working with, we always use the black one. And so once the cap is on, the only thing I have to do is flick it, make sure all the volume of the water is at the bottom of the vial and that there is no air bubble. And so sometimes it's really easy, sometimes you have to flick it and work it a bit more. But so my water is at the bottom, so I just have to put it in my tray and it's ready for analysis. So once all of the samples are in individual vials labeled properly, I'm putting them in the tray. So each one of them will have their specific position, so you can see position are written directly on the tray. And so my first 3 positions here are my standards. And so most of the time people tend to use 2 standards. I've used 3, that's up to you. And so I have my 3 standards here, and then my samples up to here. And so I have to enter each one of my samples manually in the computer to tell it which sample it corresponds to which bird ID for the analysis. And so I have my 3 standards here, so I changed the name manually just by clicking on it. So I could have written something else. I've decided to call it high enrichment 1B and 3. So those are my 3 standards. Then I have to make sure the tray and the position of the vial are right. And so tray numbers correspond to the position written here on the machine. And so this is tray number 1. I could have decided to put it in tray number 2. The only thing you have to make sure is that the tray number that you're putting in it correspond to the tray number written on the computer. And so I make sure this is tray number 1, standard, high enrichment, position number 1, good. So I do the same thing for my 3 standards. And then the same thing for all of my samples that I wanted to analyze. So I make sure that each number, so that's position number 4, I have T48, green, blue, white, green, silver number 1. That's what I have here. Good. So I enter that manually for each one of them. So if I want to enter more, so I have a total of 20 samples. I only have 18 entered. So to add more, you just click here. Be careful, because if you just click randomly somewhere and you click add, it's gonna add it randomly. And so to delete a row, just click X. So I wanted to add it after my number 18, add it up here. And so that's gonna be T1.5, thick bill mer number 3. And I'm gonna add my last one, which is gonna be sample number 20, so T1.5, thick bill mer number 8. Perfect. So I'm analyzing currently 2 different time point, final and initial sample. So you only have to make sure that the sample with the lowest concentration is first, to make sure that there's no cross-contamination. So I've put my final sample before my initial samples. And so next step is to double check, making sure each number corresponds to the right vial in the right position in the right tray. Once this is done, you have to tell the computer which ones are standards and which one are actual samples. So in order to do so, you have here a little spot for samples and here for standards. And so I'm going to highlight my 3 standards and click on the arrow here to transfer them in standards. Same thing for my samples, highlight all of them, transfer them here. For the analysis, we usually 4 prep injection. So I put out a 4 and then 4 measured injection. And what I'm usually setting up to is start with samples, and I run my samples my standards every 2 samples, and I ask it to do a whole group of standards before and at the end. And so what it's going to do, it's going to do all my standards and then 2 samples, 1 standard, 2 samples, 1 standard, and finish with a run of standards. Oops, sorry, here I put it at, so 1 standard per set of sample, and here I click complete standard set at beginning and end. And so I click make run, and that's going to save the setting I made. So if you go look in display here, so it starts with my high enrichment. It's doing 4 preparatory injection, 4 measured injection for my 3 standard, and so preparatory, measured, same thing for my standards, and then it runs so 8 injections per samples, 4 prep, 4 measuring. So 8 here, 1, 2 samples, and then 1 set of standard, 2 sample. So just double check everything's good. And so of the run. Before starting a run, I go, so if you click on display many times, it's just going to change screen. You have to make sure that your lasers are aligned inside the machine. And so what you want to see is that your absorption peaks here fit within the purple box. If for any reason it doesn't, you have to go in setup, laser adjust, disable laser frequency lock, and then so you'll see you have a slight dip here in the curve. There you can't really see it. And so by, let's say I'm just gonna de-adjust it for fun, so you see how it moves that way. If I go check in my display, see how my laser have moved, and so that's not good. I want to make sure it's centered in there, and so I'll go in setup, laser adjust, and I'll try to adjust the little curve with the dotted line right over there. So I'm almost there. It's not super obvious where's the middle of the dip with that, and so sometimes what you'll have to do is place it approximately where you think it's good. Close this, look at it in display, see I'm in the middle, that's good. Oops, close. Next, you'll have to go and set up again. So back to your main page. So how you switch pages is just by clicking on display. So back to my main page, if you click on setup, I have to change the septum. I usually change it every 30 to 40 samples, and so I usually run batches of 30 samples, and so I'm going to change the septum. In order to do so, you have to click on septum, start, and it's going to take about 3 minutes to vent the cavity. And so if we come over here, the septum is what's in here, and so the needle is going to inject it's going to take the liquid from here and inject it in there, and the septum has to be changed regularly. So while this is venting, the last thing you have to do before starting your run is actually put the needle in the machine here. So I'm going to start by turning it on. And so it's really important that every time you turn off the machine, you take the needle out of there, because if you don't, it can actually break the needle. And so you have to put it in and take it out every time you run a batch. And so this is going to take a few seconds to start. For the needles, I want to use the one right over here. So it's a 1.2 microliter needle, well, syringe. And so just take it out of its box. So that's what it looks like. You have to be extremely careful not to curve or break it because it's really fragile and it has to be used only for double-labelled water analysis. And so how to change it, you go here in menu. So you click on F1, menu, change syringe, and then this thing here is gonna come forward. Once you hear the beep, it means you can do it. And so you just lift the window here and put the syringe in here. And so those two things here have a tiny holes in order to allow the needle to pass. You have to make sure that the needle is perfectly aligned in there so that it doesn't curve or anything or block as it tries to inject. So it's a bit of a delicate task. Put it in there, make sure it's well aligned, and then slide this in here. And so right now my needle is not quite in properly. So I'm gonna do a second try. Then again, being really careful not to bend the needle. There you go, now it's in. Push it in, and then you just have to make sure that that here goes right there. Lock this, so just by putting it on the side so that the syringe can't get out, and close the window. Once it's done, you just press continue, and it's done. Next step is to put your tray on the machine, and you'll have to align the needle with those. So really important to make sure that you have vials, even if they're empty. So those two here are empty, so I didn't enter them in the computer, but it's really important that they are in each corner because you'll have to use them in order to align your needle properly. So in order to do so, you go in utilities. So just by rolling that here, you can move in the menu. So utilities, tray. So I am in tray 1. If you're using any other tray, just roll it and allow you to move from tray to tray. So I want to go to tray 1. And I'm going to tell it to move to position number 1, which corresponds to the corner right over here. So move to position 1. So you can see here that it's not perfectly aligned. It's a bit hard to see on the video, but so in order to adjust it, here it's adjust offset XYZ for position number 1. Okay. And you go on offset Z. If you click on it once, twice, the only thing that's going to do is lift it a bit so that you can move it around without rubbing on the vial. Then if you want to move it either forward or on the side, so on the side is X and forward, backward is Y. So I want to move it a bit on this side. And so you just click on it, rolling one side or the other is going to move it from side to side. Once you're done adjusting it, click on it again. Then I'm going to do it to Y. So that's going to move it a bit. And so you can look at it from different angles. That seems pretty aligned. I'm happy with the results. So I'm going to do click on it to get out of there, and then do move to number 9, position 9. So as you can see, 9 is really not adjusted right now. And so same thing, but I'm gonna go to DX and DY and DZ. So same thing again, click on Z once, twice, just to lift it. And so my needle is really too forward right now, so I want to back it up. So I'm gonna click on Y and back it up. It's better to go slowly. I went a bit fast over there. Still not quite aligned. So just have to look at it from different angles. Same. So once you're done, click on it. I'm gonna move to X because I'm not quite happy with the results. Alright, now it's pretty aligned. So click on it again and move to position 54. Same thing, really not aligned. So click OK. And to align for the corner 54, you have to go in call. Same thing, you have X, Y, Z. So click on it, just lift it. So I'm gonna go to Y, move it backward a bit. Z. Oops. So there you go. So now you can see with the white cap, it's a bit easier to see if it's aligned or not. So now I'm pretty happy with the results. Click on it. And so if you're happy with it, you can leave it like that. I like to double check, make sure it stayed aligned. So I'm going to move back to position number 1. So it only aligns 3 corners. Once 3 of the corners are aligned, you can fit the 4th one. So that's pretty cool. It moved a tiny bit. So I'm just going to back it up a bit, but it's much better than earlier. So I'm just going to go back in offset Y. Back it up a tiny bit. It can move a bit between adjustment just because it doesn't necessarily lay on the vial the same way every time. So see, what I forgot to do here was click on Z before, and so when I adjusted it, it wasn't moving properly. There you go, so now it's aligned. I'm gonna move to position 9. That's a pretty good fit. I'm gonna move to position 54. And that's good. Alright, so needle adjustment, everything's done. I can go back home. Alright, so while we're doing this, the septum vented completely, and so now we can manually change it. And so what you'll need is gloves, heat tolerant gloves, because this part here is pretty hot. And so just unscrew it. So I'll show you what the septum looks like. So the septum is that little rubbery red thing at the bottom. And so what you want to do is just set it there. Here is the septum changing kit. And so you have this kind of dentist tool to take the old septum out. And so, oh, it's hot. You just go in with the little hook, put it in the hole, and take it out. It's not sticky or anything, it's really easy to do. So that's the old septum. So now you want to put a new one. So new ones are in this little like pill looking thing. So you just take a new one out. And so when you put it in, you want to make sure that you can see the little white side up, and so facing towards you. If you're seeing that end, that's not good. That's the end that's supposed to go at the bottom. And so to put it in, you'll need the other little tool that is in the bag, which is sort of like a fancy toothpick. And so first of all, you want to, there's a hole in the septum, a tiny hole. You want to make sure you can go all the way through with it. So you put it in, that's good. So the next step is going to be to place it in. So if you grab the septum with the heat tolerant gloves and place the fancy toothpick in there and pass the septum white face up through, and then you just pull on this thing here to make sure it goes at the bottom. So if you look at it from here, I'm just going to slowly pull this. There you go. And you just screw the septum back on it. Make sure to put it pretty tight because you want to make sure that the pressure stays the same. There's no leaks in pressure. If it happens, you will see it in the first run. You'll have some flags coming up telling you the density or the pressure is not good. And that's mostly a sign that it's not tight enough. Obviously, don't tighten it too much that you're not able to take it off afterwards, but you want it to be pretty tight. That's good. It's in place. Once this is done, just click next. It's gonna pump it up for 1 minute, and once all of this is done, you're gonna be ready to start the run. Last thing you can do for the needle, once your septum is changed and everything, is to align that, make sure it's aligned with the septum. And so if you click on menu again, and you go in utilities, click on it. And so earlier we went in tray, this time we're going to go in injector. So that's LCV1V1, that's what we want. So we're telling it to go to the injector. Once it's here, you'll just click move to injector, same thing as when we were adjusting the needle for the vials. Perfect, that's good, that's what we want. Personally, I've never had it de-adjusted, but in case it is, you can play with it. I just always double check it, make sure it's fine. And so, Alright, so back to the computer. The septum changing is done. So you just do close. And so now we're ready to actually start the run. And so you click on display. And the last step, once you're sure everything is fine, all you know, there's no mistakes in the position, you've aligned the laser, you've changed the septum, you've put the needle in, you've aligned the needle with the tray and the injector. The only thing left is to press start. And you'll hear a little beep 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 from the machine come over there. That's normal, and your run is starting. So, the liquid water isotope analyzer has been running for many hours yesterday. The run is now done, so you can see that here the total run progress is completed. And so what I'm doing there is just double checking whether there were any flags. And so as you can see, it does 4 preparatory run and then 4 run where it can actually measure the values. And so as long as it's green, it's good, everything went well. From time to time you'll get flags, just like that, like so here, density, which happened with my high enriched standards. And so flags like that in standards will occur quite frequently actually, especially if we look towards the end, where I get more and more flags. Since it takes so many samples in the standards kind of tend to get a bit screwed up towards the end, so that's normal. What you want to check for is just make sure that the flags didn't occur in any of the samples. So then again, this is in the standards, not an issue. Have one here in the standard, that's fine. Oh, here, so out of my 4 measured injection for the samples of thick bilber number 8, I got 2 flags here, density. And so I got 2 out of 4, so that's fine. I wouldn't rerun. If I get more than, if I get 3 or 4 flags within the same 4 measured ones, I'll tend to rerun them in a future run. But in this case, not too alarming. So dense is for density, so that's probably a sign that there was an air bubble that I didn't see in my vial. So there's many different flags. In this case here I mostly got density, then again here in the standards towards the end. If for any reason you get many flags, you don't know what they mean, in the little book here towards the end there is a troubleshooting section with all the flags and what they mean and what you can do. And so you just go look in the book. I don't remember exactly which page it is, but you'll find it in there. And so it's mostly density you'll get. If you get density flags right at the beginning, here and there, I'd usually suggest that you just stop the run and make sure that when you change the septum, you put it back properly. And so just re-change the septum, tied it properly, and start it again. But other than that, I never had any problem. So once this is done, what you can do if you want to transfer the file on a flash drive, for example, so you'll go here and click on Files. And right here on a computer, there's a place where you can load your flash drive, so you put it there, click Mount USB. In this case, I don't have any flash drive right now, and so I can't mount it. But so click here, Mount USB, then your flash drive is going to appear here, and you just drag and drop the file that you want to transfer here. And so not working because I don't have a flash drive in there right now. And once you're done drag and dropping, you just click unmount USB and close. And once this is done, you're done with everything. You checked if there were flags, there were mistakes, the value seems right. Just click exit here, and it's gonna say, do you wish to shut off the instrument? If you click yes, so in this case I'm not gonna click yes, but usually you click yes, and it's gonna take 3 minutes just to vent off the cavity. And then you can look behind here. If you just reached, there is a switch for on and off. Just switch it off. Once it tells you, you can switch it off. Once this is done, really important, before turning off the syringe right over there, really important that you take the syringe out of there, because if you don't, when you turn it off, it will drop, and this is how you break the syringe. So same thing, then when you put it in, you go in menu, change syringe, So there you go. So it's telling me I can change the syringe. So I'm going to do just the reverse of what I did to put it in. Open the door, unlock it, pull gently, making sure that I'm not bending the needle, closing the little door, and then continue. And so this is gonna go back right over there, and then I can turn off the machine. There is a on and off switch right in the back there, so I turn it off, and here's what it's gonna do. See how it dropped? So if you forget to take out the syringe before putting it off, it goes down like that and bends the syringe. So really important to remember to take it out. And that's it. That completes the analysis of the water.